Margaret, an old woman, lived in a quiet suburban area with quiet streets and charming houses. Her face looked like it had been there for a long time, and her bright eyes looked like they had seen many decades. She had always been strong and independent, and everyone who met her felt welcomed in her heart. But as the years went by, her health started to get worse, making her more and more reliant on her family's help. Margaret would sit by the window every evening and watch the world go by while talking about the fun things she did as a child. Her home, a cozy bungalow with flowers in the yard, in full bloom, held a lifetime of special memories. There was a picture on the wall of her son Robert as a child, which made her miss the good old days even more. In the same house with Margaret was Robert, her son. Robert was married to Sarah. He was a loving husband and father. They had 2 boys, Michael and Daniel, who made them happy and made them laugh. At first, the family seemed like a happy place where everyone could get together. Margaret's favorite chair was where she would sit and tell her grandkids stories from her past. The boys would sit there and listen intently. Margaret had a strong will and was a bit stubborn in nature, even when they went against what her son's family expected. Sarah, Robert's wife, liked things to be organized and consistent, so she told him that Margaret was too demanding and had mood swings. It started to feel less cozy inside the house, and a feeling of tension and dissatisfaction took its place. Robert felt trapped because he had to be a good son and a husband and a father at the same time. It was very hard on him because there was always fights in the family. He couldn't do anything about it as his family got angrier with his mother, which made him make a terrible choice. One night, after a very heated fight between his mother and his wife Sarah, Robert went to his study to think about this problem. Not only would his choice change his own life, but it would also change the lives of his wife, children, and mother, whom he loved. Robert felt guilty and was going through a lot of trouble. It was clear that he loved his mother, but he couldn't ignore the rising stress in his home any longer. It became more and more appealing to him to move his family to the busy city. Margaret couldn't stand being alone without her beloved son and his family. Once a place where people laughed and lived, her cozy bungalow was now a cavern of echoing quiet. She had to reach out and call Robert one night because her heart hurt so much. It was hard for her to speak as she told him how much she missed him and her beloved grandkids. "I miss you so much, Robert," Margaret said in a weak voice. "It's been a long time since I saw the boys. Could you please invite them over for a visit?" The way Robert answered was cold, and his voice was still bitter. "This is what we talked about, Mom. You can't call me like this out of the blue. It's not that easy." Margaret's heart sank when she heard her son's voice far away. "I just miss you all so much," she said with tears in her eyes. Robert told his mother, "I can't deal with this right now." His words showed that he was angry. "I need to leave. Goodbye." Then he hung up, leaving Margaret in tears and feeling even more alone than before. The mother and son did not talk to each other for 3 long, painful years. They were so quiet that it was like a huge gap that they couldn't cross. Then, on a day that seemed normal, Robert's life was thrown off by a loud ring of the phone. It was his aunt, Margaret's sister, calling. She had always been a comfort and a wise person in the family. "Aunt Linda." Robert picked up the phone. His voice shook with surprise. She hadn't talked to him in years. "Robert, it's been a long time," Aunt Linda said, with a voice full of worry and determination. "I'm calling because I think it's time for you to visit your mom. Her health has gotten very bad and she's not doing well at all." Robert was taken off guard and felt like bad things were about to happen. "What is happening, Aunt Linda? Why did no one tell me?" Even over the phone, his aunt's sigh showed how heavy the situation was. "If you know Margaret, you know how stubborn she can be. She demanded that no one knows her illness. But now is the right time. She wants to see you. It's important for you and her." Robert felt guilty and scared, but he knew he had to listen to his aunt's words. He felt a lot of different things. When he thought about seeing his mother again after these years, he felt regret, sadness, and longing. He started the trip back to the quiet suburban neighborhood, but what he had done made his heart heavy. As he got closer to the house he knew, memories came flooding back. The sound of his mom laughing and the smell of a famous apple pie from home stayed in the air. He felt like a stranger when he went back to the place where he had grown up. It was now full of memories and the sound of old fights. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. He still lived next door to the same friendly people he knew as a kid. The house looked like he remembered it, and the yard had the same flowers in bloom. It made him remember the painful times he lived there, not knowing at all how much pain his mother was in. He walked into the house and was surrounded by a cold silence. There was a heavy stillness in the air as the curtains were drawn. Robert was careful as he walked up to the front door. His heart was racing as he thought about what was going to happen. He slowly opened the door, not sure what was on the other side. After taking a deep breath, it felt like the house had no one in it. The rooms were empty and the places where people used to laugh and talk seemed to be haunted by memories of better times. As Robert walked through the house, he saw a shawl thrown over a chair and a framed picture of the family on the side table that reminded him of his mother. Robert's heart sank as he looked at the framed picture of his mother and the new flower wreath that sat next to it. The picture showed a warm smile, and her eyes showed love and knowledge that was hiding behind a mask of anger and miscommunication. She made the room feel heavy, and her absence hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Along with the picture, there was an envelope with his name written in Margaret's beautiful handwriting. He reached for the letter with shaking hands. These are the words he had been waiting to hear, the ones that would reveal the truth about their shared past. Every line he read was a revelation, a look into Margaret's heart and her pain that she didn't want to say. Because of how heavy her words were, he could barely read them. He could hear her voice as she wrote, "Dear boy, this letter means I'm not here anymore if you see it. I loved you and thought about your family all the time. They said I was the bad one because I complained and acted badly. In fact, it was your wife Sarah who was mean to me, and you didn't see that. I didn't tell you. I never told you that she taught your boys, Michael and Daniel, how to be mean to me. I never meant to upset the peace in your family. I knew I was dying, but I didn't call you to ask you to come to my funeral." The weight of what she said hit Robert hard, and he felt a wave of guilt and sadness. When she wrote that letter, she let out all the facts that she had been holding back because of family problems. In her message, Margaret asked for understanding, peace, and for the pain she had been through in quiet to be recognized. Robert's tears came out easily as he read her last words. He was now in possession of Margaret's mercy, love, and the knowledge she had shared with her throughout her life. It was a priceless gift that could never fully be returned. Love, family, and strong ties that time and misunderstanding could not break were what was left behind. At the same time that Robert kept reading his mother's letters, her words echoed through the room like a sad tune. She wrote a heavy message that hit him hard. In every line he could feel the pain his mother was carrying. "I know I was dying, and I never called you so you could attend my funeral." Margaret's words carried the weight of sadness that she felt in her last days, but didn't say out loud. Robert thought how lonely she must have been as her health got worse, and she knew her time was running out. The painful truth in her letter made him remember how much he had lost by not being there for his mother when she needed him the most. He was crying as he thought about her last moments, when her love and pain were mixed together in her heart. He looked at the words she had written with such care, but his eyes were cloudy with sadness. He was so hurt by his mistake that he could hardly stand it. He had a deep understanding of who he was that tore at his very soul. Forgiving his mother was a medicine that might help him heal from the hurt of the past. He had missed seeing her pain and suffering. Robert's pain was like a storm inside that was about to break him apart. His feelings were so heavy that he felt they were going to crush him as he knelt on the floor. The room around him seemed to blur. His tears filled the house, which had been quiet before, with sad sounds that mixed with the many memories of his mother. It was like the walls could feel his pain and hear him cry, as if they were also suffering. He let out all the tears and feelings he had been holding back for years. The pain of his guilt and regret left him shaking. He had let down his mother, who had given him life, love, and knowledge. He was finally starting to understand how much she was hurting quietly, and how much she loved him even though they didn't talk about it because of their problems and mistakes. He kept thinking about all the times he had ignored her pain because he felt bad about regretting it. Many times he had turned a blind eye because he cared more about keeping his family together than about her health. He remembered the times he had supported his wife Sarah without realizing it was making his mother feel bad. These regrets made him feel very bad about himself. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Robert said in a sad voice that broke through his tears. "I was a bad son. I should have kept you safe from everything." Though there was silence in the room, the soft sound of Robert's sobbing and his admission of guilt could be heard. It was a deep moment of self-realization that let out feelings that had been building up inside him for years. Robert had seen his flaws and had to deal with the result of his actions, while also trying to get forgiveness from the person he would never be able to talk to again. Robert would remember the painful lesson Margaret's letter taught him for the rest of his life. It was clear from the words she wrote what he had done, and he could never change the past. Robert's shoulders were weighed down by the weight of the past, of missed chances and unsolved problems. He thought about the wonderful years he had lost with his mother, and how they could never get them back. He thought about how much pain and loneliness his mother must have been going through in her last years, and it made him feel so sad. He learned some very important lessons from his mother's letter. They were heavy and deep. He knew how important it was to listen, understand, and put family first above all else. Her memory would always show me what happens when I forgot about those values. For days after Robert was alone and thought about the results of his actions and the decisions he had made, even though he couldn't change the past, he could change what happens in the future. He promised himself that he would be a better father, husband, and son. People in Robert's family started to get along better after he made amends. He showed his wife Sarah the letter from his mother, and they talked for a long time about the lessons they had learned. To respect Margaret's memory, they promised to love, care for, and understand each other and their children. Robert was determined to share what was written in his mother's letter with his two sons, Michael and Daniel. He wanted them to know how important family is and how painful it is to understand people's feelings. His mother's letter was the perfect tool to do so, and he wanted to share the letter as soon as possible. With the money his mother had left him as a gift, Robert was in a tough spot. He knew he had to be smart about how he used it to honor her memory. He was torn between hope and duty as he sat down with his family to talk about their future. Robert said, "We have a unique chance here," his voice full of determination. "Our mom left us some money, which we can use to make our lives better. It's a new start, a fresh start." Sarah agreed and nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I feel like we should forget about the past and look to the future. Everything we did wrong has taught us something that we can now use to make our family better and happier." Their kids, Michael and Daniel, who were a little older and more aware of how families work, paid close attention. Michael said, "Dad, I want to be a better son to you, like you want to be a better dad to us." Daniel added, "I promise to treat everyone in our family with love, and I promise to treat everyone in our family with love and respect, just like Grandma would have wanted." Robert felt touched by how honest they were, and knew they were on the right track to getting better. He chose to wisely invest in the inheritance, giving his family a financial cushion for the future that would let them follow their dreams and make their life together more safe and happy. The day came when Robert decided to share his mother's letters with his sons, hoping that they would understand the message their grandmother was sending them through that message. He called his sons into the living room one night. Robert had the letter in his shaking hands as they sat on the couch together. His voice got choked up as he reread his mother's words out loud. The boys listened carefully, and their faces showed that they were surprised, guilty, and understanding. Michael looked at his dad with teary eyes when he was done. "Dad, I didn't know. I thought Grandma was always so grumpy. I had no idea how much she loved us." Daniel agreed and nodded. "Dad, I want to make things right. I'd like to be a better grandson." Robert smiled through his tears because he was proud of how grown up and wise his sons had become. "Your grandma is very proud of both of you. It's never too late to make a change, and I'm glad our family can begin again." The pain of the past slowly went away as the years went by. Once split up by disagreements and grudges, the family became stronger and closer than ever. Margaret's memory lived on, not as a steady reminder of pain, but as proof of how powerful forgiveness is and how important it is to treasure family ties. The family had learned to talk to each other honestly and freely, dealing with their problems and disagreements with understanding and compassion. Every moment they spent together made them happy, and they looked forward to making new memories to replace the ones that were ruined by mistakes. In honor of Margaret, the family also started working at community groups in their area to help people in need and spread kindness. In order to truly honor her memory, they knew it was best to uphold their ideals of love, kindness, and forgiveness. Robert often went to see his mother's grave, which was a painful spot in the nearby graveyard. He would sit next to her grave and tell her stories about his life, his family, and the lessons he had learned. He found peace and comfort there, as well as a link between the woman who had given him life and knowledge. With each visit, he felt like he had finished the story and was at peace. Margaret's spirit seemed to keep an eye on them and lead them to a better, more peaceful future. The thought of her always reminded people to treasure and care their family ties, because that's where the real riches of life were found. Robert learned many important lessons from his mother, and he kept them close to his heart as he went through the ups and downs of life. Margaret's legacy was a bright light that kept shining on their road, showing them how important love, forgiveness, and strong family bonds are.